All right, welcome everybody to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. This is episode 194. Tonight, my guests, two S's, one S, whatever, multiple S. Not just one guest, two guestesses. Bill MAUS and Steve Stern. I know you might be thinking, well, they were here a month ago? Yeah. So? I like talking to them. I want to talk to them again. So tonight we're going to be talking about overcoming obstacles in comics. That's going to be a good one. They have, I'm guessing, quite a lot to discuss about that topic. But before we bring them on, I want to say hello to those of you in the chat. We got Massive Panda here. Says, what's up, Pete? Fun fact, did you know the giant panda was considered a cryptid? Yes. Until they discovered it, it was considered a cryptid. And there's your fun fact for the day. The massive panda, though, which is probably bigger than the giant panda, yet to be discovered, unless you count the one in our chat. Matthew Moreau, what's up, Matthew? Hope you're doing well. We got Bill MAUS here, too. Look at that. Bill MAUS in the chat, on the panel. He's everywhere tonight, running the court. Wayne, how's it going, Wayne? Hope you're doing well. We got Jaded One here, too. How's it going, Jaded One? Charlie in the house as well says, hey, people can only hang around for a bit. We'll have to catch the rest later. Hope everyone's doing good. Well, thank you, Charlie, for stopping by, and I'm glad you're here for however long it may be. Kelraiser, what's up, Kelraiser? Hope you're doing good. And Massive Panda. Yeah, you agree. All right. So without further ado, let's bring on the guests of the hour, Mr. Bill MAUS and Steve Stern. What's up, Steve and Bill?
Hello,
Hey,
Peter. Thanks for having us back here, my man.
I know, right?
No problem. It was a great conversation last time, so I suspect this one will be just as good, if not better.
I like the topic that you picked. I liked it. I like it.
Now,
I have a
Peter,
feeling.
correct me if I'm wrong. You and I are both from Long Island, New York.
That's correct.
I love that fact. No wonder we have such great conversations.
Exactly. Get some coffee, you know.
Get some coffee.
Yeah. Have a long talk.
Yeah. And you are now in New Hampshire, correct?
Yes, that is also correct.
I'm in
Are
the
you,
Los
I'm going to have
Angeles
to ask you
area.
some questions about how you know all this, Steve.
Oh, he just
Good.
remembers. This is
I
us
remember our
twice. This is us
prior
twice in 1 month.
conversation.
By the way, I do feel special that you've allowed us to be on before a month is even out.
No problem at all.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, it's never taken for granted. So it's like I appreciate it, dude. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see you guys. You got a campaign going on right now for Zen Intergalactic Ninja, Zen Bounty Wars #1. That's on Kickstarter, and it's doing well.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a little bit towards the end of the show, but right now it's at 158 backers with 71 hours left. So I'm putting the link here for you guys in the chat if you want to check that out.
Awesome. Thank you.
And you're trying to get to your second stretch goal?
Right.
Yes, which is one I'd love to get to because it's a sticker based on Bill's art, of course, of Zen. A large sticker that you could put on like a water bottle, a notebook, on your wall, or whatever you want to.
I'm a sucker for die-cut stickers. I have to have.
Yeah.
Like,
I really want to have. We had so many Zen licensed items, over the years. But believe it or not, never stickers. It was one of the few things we never did.
I need a corner. I need to corner the Zen market on stickers.
Yeah, so now we're going to maybe have stickers. Hopefully, for this this go round, if we can get to the next level, we'll get there. So anybody who wants to help out and get a sticker of Zen among other items, feel free to check out the the Kickstarter.
Fantastic. Yeah, I just got a. Speaking of stickers, let me see. Can I reach? No, I can't. Everything's gonna fall down.
No, don't make
We got
fall down.
a die cut sticker We got a die cut sticker in yesterday of King Cryptid. It's like got a nice brushed metallic look to it.
Oh, nice.
nice.
And
Cool.
yeah, it came in. It looks pretty cool. But yeah, I love the extras from these kinds of campaigns. You know, you can't just get them when you go pick up a book at the comic shop. You can't all get these fun things that come with it.
No.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
true.
Well, I like to treat Kickstarters like we're a band dropping our album. You know, because
Yeah.
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
we're not publishing and putting a book on the shelf every month like we used to. So it's like, so all right, we do the Kickstarter. It's like, this is our big drop. So it's like having those little extras in there, like the extra stuff, like make it more of an event. You know, treat it more like an event type item thing. You know, it's like
Absolutely.
makes it so much more fun, right? So
Yeah, something extra and special, and you know, I love all that stuff. Prints, trading cards, stickers,
my power
sometimes like a
ballad.
mini poster. Yeah,
Yep. We got them all.
very nice. So about tonight's topic, overcoming
Yes.
obstacles in comics.
Oh,
Wherever you guys want to take this, wherever you want to go with it and discuss whatever you want to talk about, it's up to you. The ball's in your court. Please feel free to lead the conversation to wherever you want to go. Talk about something as much or as little as you want. But I'm really curious as to basically what you guys have come up against in comics, because we always come up against stuff just in life in general. But
that's true.
you know, so many people see the successes, they see the achievements, they see everything and think, oh, they must have just every single thing they did worked out.
They don't
And-
know that Jewel lived in her van for like years before she became famous or whatever, you know.
right.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, oh, they just got all these easy breaks. That must have been the way, you know, and they don't see the mountain of insane obstacles sometimes you have to go through
I'm sure
to
Steve
even
and I,
achieve the smallest thing.
yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
Steve and I have different perspectives because we're coming at it from different ends of, you know, Steve's more, you know, obviously the writer, publishing, licensing end of things, and I'm the struggling creative artist trying to make his way into the business. So I got two different ends of the totem pole over here.
Yeah, but it all comes under the umbrella of that tried and true expression: life isn't fair. Okay, that nothing is given. Nothing is given to us. Okay, and you know that Stallone quote you have in your opening sequence is so key, Peter. It's about how hard a hit you can take and get up afterwards and keep on going. Because, you know, unless you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, first of all, you know, you're behind the eight ball from the outset, right? And the powers that be are already there. Whether, if you want to look at it in the comic book world, then we can do that. Okay. So, for example, there were, for the longest time, there was Marvel and DC. And then back in the day, a fellow named Ken F. Levin, who's the current publisher of Zen, right? He starts up this company called First Comics. And it's the company that said, look, we know you got those two big boys out there, Marvel and DC, but we're going to publish all of the indie books, and the creators are going to keep their rights. The creators are going to continue to own their properties, whereas, you know, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all that, they're owned by those major corporations. Okay, so you know, Zen, as a self-published comic that Dan Cody and I published the first issue of in 1987, and First Comics as the true independent publisher, you know, we're a living testament to how one can buck the system. Bill's the same way. Bill hooked up with Don Chin way back in the day, and they created Parody Press and then Entity Comics, which published Zen before First Comics did. So we're really the intransigents, as you are, Peter. I mean,
Absolutely.
Alterna, the name alone says it all, doesn't it? Right? I mean, you know, so we're all providing an alternative to the massive system, right? And that, so to me, it's just finding your path and sticking to it. And you're going to get knocked down. And if you get up, great. If you don't get up, well, then you're just going to go in a different direction, right? If you have a firm belief in what you do, all three of us here have a firm belief that, we love what we do. We believe we know what we're doing, and we do it.
Nobody told me back then that you were supposed to have a path. I would have gotten here a little sooner. If
Well, that's the thing is
me.
you got to make your own path,
Well, it's
so
the tried and true method of I'll come at it from the struggling artist point of view, where you're supposed to go to comic book conventions, you're supposed to show all of these people your portfolio, have them ripped to shreds, and then hopefully find an opportunity, somewhere in there. And I think what I ended up doing was, first of all, I got that first gig doing a parody for Eclipse Comics called X Farce. That's where I met Don in the first place. So I think we kind of sidestepped the idea of taking our parodies and taking our ideas to publishers. And Don was just like, we're going to make our own opportunities. We're going to make our own path. So that's when we co-founded Parody Press, and then it just never looked back from that point, for better or worse. We didn't know if it was going to work. He moved from Eureka. I lived in San Diego. He lived in Eureka, California, and we both moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, just so our houses could be closer together. So that way, it's easier to get our work done. Like him and his wife Laura were doing all the pre-press stuff, like in their house. Like their house was the studio. They had like the big film machines and stuff.
Like the color separations and all that other. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. You walked in there and it's just like
a lot easier today, man.
Yeah, it's like Breaking Bad, and I was back there with all the chemicals and the vats. I think we did everything except chop down the trees and make the paper. It's just it was pretty crazy.
Yeah,
pre Photoshop. This is before Photoshop, dude. This is
before the internet. This is before cell phones. We go back. We go back a ways.
You know what Don bought me? Like the coolest piece of tech that Don Chin bought me when we first, kind of started out. And we're back and forth and doing our thing. He bought me a fax machine. Literally, I thought that was like the most high tech,
cutting edge.
It was cutting edge. Yeah. When I went from,
I'll go you one. I'll go you one better. You ready for this? My first computer was bought. Check this out. At Tandy. Remember Radio Shack?
Yeah.
Tandy. Okay. It was a listen to this. It was a Tandy computer. But do you know how it sent signals? It was on reel-to-reel tape. And it went beep, 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 beep. It was unbelievable.
This is back when
one step above Morse code.
That's what I was about to say.
It was like Morse code.
Back in the old West, we were making comic books like this.
That was my first computer. But it's like
incredible.
And here's another thing. Like in this life, right? You make choices, and if you don't make the choices, life makes the choices for you. Okay, so I made a couple of very interesting choices, which I'll tell you about. Okay, and some of these choices were just circumstance. Okay, so
now these are family-friendly choices, Steve.
Oh, totally.
What kind of show we're running here?
Okay. Totally. I'm not in court for any kind of weird goings on. Okay. And I've never been sued, and I've never gone bankrupt.
It's gonna be a new show on Prime called Better Call Steve.
I've kind of like towed the line, but I'll give you an example. I think you'll find this interesting. So, how did I meet Stan Lee? Stan Lee, and you'll see where there's a choice involved here, but you got to let me get to it, okay?
All right.
So, Stan Lee lived in a town called, now you're a Long Islander. He lived in Hewlett Bay Harbor, okay, on Long Island. My uncle, Sidney Ladenheim, had the big electronics store in the adjoining town of Hewlett. So anybody who at that time was buying what you called a stereo or a hi-fi, any of that equipment, you bought it from my uncle. Okay, he had like cornered. He was the Best Buy of the day before there was anything like a Best Buy, right? So who do you think bought his stereo equipment from my uncle Sid? Was Stan Lee. Stan would be in Manhattan every day. He'd come out on the Long Island Railroad, and my uncle had his store right adjacent to that, right? So Stan would buy his equipment from Sid. Who do you think delivered the equipment to Stan's house? Me.
Good choice.
So I meet Stan, and I was already a dyed-in-the-wool comic book fanatic, right? And years later, I was in college, and I was the editor of the college magazine at the University of Miami called Tempo, okay? And I did a big story on Marvel Comics, and I sent it to Stan. And interestingly enough, trust me, I'm getting somewhere with this, but it's a little bit of a circuitous story. But
Okay.
life
Okay.
is
I'm
kind
with you.
Okay. So I sent it to Stan, and by the way, that story, that article, which was called Marvelous, that was the title in the Tempo magazine. So I'm watching a month or two ago. I'm watching the Stan Lee documentary on Disney Plus, which is very, very good. And in it, Stan starts talking about how they got to use the name Marvel. And right on the screen comes my article with my byline, and it stays on the screen. You can see it. It stays on the screen for about 5 seconds, right? But as a result of that, Stan offered me a job to work for him. He sent me a letter, which I've kept to this day. He said, call me. I have his phone number on it, right? I called him, and I said, well, Stan, I just got a scholarship to law school, so I can't, right? And, that was a hard decision for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then a year later, I drop out of law school anyway, because I cannot stand it. Right? But, and then at that point, I got married. I opened an ad agency. So it looked like my comic book days were behind me. But that was like a major choice I made, not to accept a job from Stan Lee at Marvel Comics, right? But I don't rue the fact that I didn't do it, because then I never probably would have created Zen. So, this is just how life,
So you were this close.
With it.
You're this close to getting me a job drawing Spider-Man. Steve! Dude! That's how that story was supposed to end.
Yeah, right. But again,
Wow,
you make your
man.
choices, and then your life goes down a different path. It's like that one of those choose your own adventure things.
Now, when you were delivering that stereo equipment, did you know you were going to Stan Lee?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And he was just a great guy. We became friends. I used to go to his office was in Beverly Hills here, in the top of this building, Bank of America building, and we would go to lunch every so often at Nate and Al's, which is this well-known deli, that's right there in the heart of Beverly Hills. So, it was all good. It was all good. You make your choices, and then you go down a path. And
Did he remember you as the stereo delivery guy, or did you ever refresh his memory?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely.
That's
yeah.
great.
Something tells me you brought it up.
No, he,
Okay.
we remained in contact for a long time.
That's
great.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. That's how some of my, how you have the fan letters pages like in Fantastic Four and all that. I had some letters in there, and I think he made sure they got in there. So, which is nice, which was fun.
Nice.
But, yeah, but and when it comes to Marvel, I'll just mention one other thing. Years later, after Zen started making some waves as an indie, and I might have mentioned this in our last interview. Marvel, again, not Stan now. Stan was kind of removed from Marvel at that point, but Marvel offered us $25,000 to take over Zen. And that's another choice I made. No. Okay. Would have been nice to get a nice hit of bucks at that time, but in no way could I let other people determine Zen's path. So again, a choice, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Was that a difficult choice or an easy choice for you to make?
Well, because I'm so hard-headed about certain things, it was a very easy choice. I didn't hesitate for a second, and I think Dan, because Dan and I co-own Zen, I think Dan was 100% on board with that anyway. Because Dan's also, like all of us, I think a very independent thinker. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the right thing to do. I mean, 25,000 to let go of your character altogether is, it's,
No.
I remember when COVID first actually struck
Yeah.
our home, I actually did let go of one of my IPs to a company out in Europe, but it was an IP that I wasn't using. It's like, if it was Nera X, which is the one that I've been actually publishing and actually kind of like trying to grow and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure I would have said no,
Yeah.
especially for the amount of money that it was, because it was probably half of what they offered you for Zen.
Right.
But it was one of our Parody Press entity kind of. It was a title called The Skunk, and it was we did like 6 issues. We did a 6-issue and like 1 crossover, and it was a company that they were what they were doing was they were acquiring 90s properties in order to grow something for themselves later on, which I have no idea if anything will come out of it. It's one of those things where things slowed down, everybody was stuck at home, everybody knew how I felt because now they were all stuck at home just like me, and living in a cave just like I was. And so because things were slowing down, I was
choose
just like,
that life, Bill.
I chose it. Yeah, I chose it. I don't complain about that life, but it is nice to know that everybody else knows how I feel. Just so they can identify, it's just to look across the room and it's just like, give me the little wink. It's like, yeah, I know what it's like.
See, Charlie's got a question for you guys. Says, if it's all right to ask, fellas, is the first Zen book a big one, or is it issue by issue? The art looks cool and punchy.
Oh, you're talking about relative to this Kickstarter, right? I presume?
Yeah, I'm thinking so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Explain.
It's a 4-issue miniseries. Each issue is going to be like a 24-ish page book. So it's either going to be 24, 25, 26 pages in length. So it's going to be, when it's all said and done, the story does take up like 105 pages.
Yeah.
Something like that. So this is the first issue of a 4-issue miniseries. And I think we should actually fulfill this campaign and be ready to start promoting issue 2 by the time Comic-Con San Diego rolls around.
Right, that's the goal.
That's our what we're shooting. If nothing else, we'll definitely be promoting it during San Diego. But we would really like to get the next Kickstarter launched
Very
right
nice.
during San Diego. Yeah. So we're trying to.
So
time
by
it
the
for that.
time all 4 books are done and fulfilled, it's literally going to be about a year, like making a movie. It's going to take a year.
It's a quarterly, quarterly kind of schedule. Right. Yeah, I appreciate that question. That's a good question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Because sometimes an issue 1 is like thicker or something. Like sometimes something to it because it's the first issue.
Like when they used to do those 2-hour specials for a series to kick off the series.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly, man.
My entire TV lineup, that was the formula back in
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s. Yeah.
Oh,
hell yeah.
man.
I know, we're being interviewed by you, Peter, but if I could just throw it back at you a little bit, I'm very curious. Like Alterna Comics, that's your baby. Could you speak a little? Is it improper for me to ask you?
No, sure. Yeah. Well, what would you like to ask?
I'd like to know how the idea, how it came to you, and how you launched it.
Oh, man. I don't know if we have an interview time that long.
Dig in deep.
Well, you can give us the shorter version. Yeah.
So I basically have always been into comics, and when I was getting into them professionally to want to make them and sell them, That was probably around, I'd say, I don't know, 19 or 20. And knowing that, okay, this is what I really want to do. I always knew I wanted to do something in comics to some capacity, and it always kind of changed here and there. But when I knew I wanted to go independent and make my own stories, I was about 19 or 20 years old. And so at that point, I was just kind of making my own stuff, learning as much as I could. And then I eventually put something out, and it was absolutely awful. But it gave birth to what became Alterna Comics. And at the time, creating the Alterna label, it was mostly just a self-publishing imprint, and I called it Alterna Comics because I didn't want to call it something that was like Semetti Studios or Pete's Publishing or whatever that is, you know. So I just was like, well, I want an alternative to what's out there, and alternative was already taken, and that was too on the nose anyway. So Alterna sounded cooler. And I could do something with the A and the A at the end and stylistically. So I figured, okay, I'll do that. I'll do Alterna Comics. And I had a graphic design degree at that point in time. Just graduated college, created Alterna in like 2006 or so. And after that, I didn't give it too much seriousness, to be perfectly honest. I think I gave it maybe, I'd said 3 years or so, and I'll probably move on. This was just something to get my own stuff out there. And you know, cut my teeth and learn and whatnot. And the thing that was weird about that was it mutated. So it went from, I learned a lot about making comics. I worked for experience with a lot of other creators too, just to get an education on what it was like to do inking, lettering, coloring, all this other stuff. But I found that there was a lot of creators out there that I thought were at least a hell of a lot more talented than I was, and they were getting doors slammed in their face left and right. And after about 6 or 7 months of saying no, it's not really a publishing company, I barely know what I'm doing. This is just a self-publishing thing. I eventually said, you know what? I've seen a lot of the same stories from a lot of people that are really talented. Let's go slow with it, and we'll do print on demand, and we'll just kind of build things up here and there. I won't rush into getting distribution. We didn't get distribution until 2008, but 2 years or so of print on demand with a bunch of other creators, maybe about 8 or 9 of them, and we had books that we went and did signings at shops. We did local conventions, and we sold a lot of print on demand books, and then eventually it grew into being something that seemed more sustainable. So we did graphic novels, because I still didn't feel comfortable demanding the single issue output in advance, being such a new publisher at that point in time, and saying, you know, well, get into the system, do it like this, and then get things out there. So a graphic novel, one a year or so, seemed pretty good for everybody's schedule. They all had day jobs, you know, and then for me to kind of manage everything, it seemed pretty feasible. But I never thought really that it would have done what it did, because I thought that Alterna would have been a good place for me to just get some stuff out and then eventually move on. And the more I did it, the more I realized I didn't want to move on. And I liked helping out and working with other independent creators. And it just, one thing after the other turned into what it was. But I never set out necessarily to go, well, 20 years from now, I'm going to be still doing this. And, you know, and here I am now, where I'm so much more comfortable with planning things out. Like the King Cryptid series I have, I'm 100% certain that with my dying breath, I'm going to continue working on that series, you know. So, and I've got issues planned out for the next 20 or so years. So it's a very different mindset as opposed to what I would have done back then. But I wasn't confident or competent enough to make any of those lofty decisions. They would have been very ill-advised and irrational, if anything. So I was still very much, and I still am in a mindset of where I'm learning more and more all the time, but then I was really trying to learn as much as I possibly could, and I definitely didn't have a lot of that kind of confidence that I felt I could make those bigger choices. It was awkward for me just even feeling like I could ask someone to pay $3 for an issue. I couldn't imagine getting people on board to commit years to the lineup, and myself to committing years and years to different books and whatnot. So a funny fact is that I was so not serious about it at first that the homepage was just alternacomics.com forwarded to our MySpace page.
Oh my God!
So we didn't even have an official site for
You
like
said
6 months.
MySpace.
Yeah.
Wow, MySpace.
So things evolved, and they kept on going, and but
Mm.
18 years later, now here we are. So
That's awesome,
Yeah,
dude. That's
yeah.
awesome.
but would you not say that the key word is persistence here?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's always, like you said, there's always these little
Mm.
choices that come your way, these forks in the road, and sometimes there's multiple forks for each decision.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But the one you pick, and you get better, I think, or at least I feel I've gotten better at picking the right path. That I
Right.
feel like I'm more confident down that path, and it'll work out.
right.
Well,
But
experience keeps on
you
pulling you.
gotta,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Hmm.
gotta get that experience. And the only way you get that experience is by going in there and being aware you're gonna make mistakes,
Hmm.
but do your best to bounce back from them as quickly as you can and not repeat them if possible.
Yeah. Pilot hours is a big difference. That's huge. Actually putting in the pilot
Absolutely.
hours. It's like just the amount of time and the amount of experiences that you've had just doing it, interacting with people, having situations evolve and
Right.
change and fall apart, come together. That's
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
when you're an entrepreneur, which we all are here, right? You're
Hmm.
going to have choices every day of your life. Okay, put it this way. Let's say you have a very legitimate job in a factory, or maybe you're an attorney in a law office, right? Well, your day is pretty much planned out for you, right? People like us, we're inherent, and I think this is true about everyone in the comic book world per se. We're risk takers. Even all the art, most of the artists in the whole industry, including the guys that work for Marvel and DC, they're
Hmm.
freelancers. They're not on a salary. They're not an employee of the company, right? So, I mean, unless you're an editor hired by Marvel or DC, especially if you're a writer, you're an artist, you're a freelancer. So the choices you make on which jobs you take, which jobs you don't take, how many jobs you can take on and juggle because your income relies on how much work you can do and at what rate. So it's like those of us who are on this side of the industry, we are the ultimate risk takers, if you ask me, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean that's
Well,
putting it kindly in some way.
well, nobody told me when I was getting out of high school the importance of having a pension. So I kept on goofing off and drawing. I would have been a lot more brave with my decisions if I was actually funded. Actually, it's kind of weird because I'm pretty sure looking at if I had actually joined military right out of high school, I think I would have actually retired probably 20 years ago, which is
Ago.
crazy. Yeah, ago. I would have retired 20 years ago, and I would have retired with a pension. So it's like, but Kat doesn't want me to travel back in time because it would erase her, and then I wouldn't have my daughter, so I can't change anything. So all
You
my
can't
flux
change the
capacitor plans are in the toilet.
Bill. None of us can change the past, right? That's the thing. You make your decisions. Some are good, some are not so good, some are fine, and then you go with the flow and the path. Like
Hmm.
Peter, did I don't know if we discussed this at all the last time we chatted. Do you know about my company's storyboard graphic novels?
No, I don't think we talked about that. No.
Okay. Well, let me tell you. All right. So in 2011, I came up with an idea, which was this. I wanted to tell screenwriters, producers, and directors, even actors, give me your screenplay and I'll turn it into a graphic novel or a comic series. Now, certain people whose names will not be mentioned told me, Steve, don't do it. It's a bad business model. Okay. Now, that was 2011. I did it. Since then, I've done over 80 projects. My clients
Hmm.
include people like the guy who was the senior story editor on Two and a Half Men and created Mike and Molly. Okay, he's a client. Other clients are producers whose names I can't divulge because all of our contracts are, have confidentiality clause. Um, Actors, other people. Okay, and
I
the
have
thing is,
so much work that you'll never see.
right, and Bill is one of my major suppliers as an artist, a letterer, a colorist.
Yeah, I'm his dealer. See, I give him the
But
stuff.
the reason I bring the reason I bring this up is I made a decision. In other words, I wanted to
Oh yeah.
see if there was an additional way to generate income and provide a service to people who needed this, right? So I made a decision and it worked out tremendously. But again, some things work, some things don't work. Okay, and but so I figured out a way to utilize my skills and my experience and my background in the comic book world to create my own niche, if you will. And
When both of you guys were starting out, this is a question I get a lot from those that are watching the show and even from people I interact with all the time at conventions or online.
mhm.
When you guys were starting out, how did you determine when it was time to start charging for your work and what that rate would be?
That's
Go
a
ahead,
hard
Bill.
one. It's hard because I find it very difficult to charge people for something I do for fun. There's lots of times that there's lots of projects that I'll do that it's like, okay, this isn't my life's passion. I just need to, whatever skills I've got, they're sharp enough that I can make this look fun. I can make this look enjoyable, but it's not the end all book I want to be working on. But I do take a lot of pleasure in the fact that it's actually funding my ability to work on the thing I want to work on later on. That's so I constantly bouncing that around. As far as when I was first starting to decide like how much to charge for my work, or even to be brave enough to say
Yeah.
no, this is actually worth this much. I would experiment a little bit. I would go like super cheap, and then people would be like, "Oh, like why are you charging only this much for it? That's embarrassing. Why charge this much for it, right?" So it's like, what are you doing?
So
It's
did
like,
someone actually say that to you?
yeah, they actually say that. I actually have my buddy Tom. He publishes Committed Comics. He's actually my regular publisher on Nera X, Cyber Angel, and he constantly publicly tells me, "Is like,
What?
why are you charging so little for your artwork?" And I'm like, there's because I see the threshold. The market always decides. I could put it if I put it too cheap, actually people think there's something wrong with it and they won't buy it. I actually had a book of artwork on my table at a convention one time because it was like extra pieces. It was just like stuff that I was just like, I've had it for a long time. It's just like extra bits. There's not like main big characters in it or anything like that. So I was just like, you know what, $5 a piece. I bet they'll be so happy, because they can't afford like an $80 piece. But I could walk away from the show with some cheap artwork that I could say I got signed or something like that, right? And nobody wanted anything in this book. It was just like a book of garbage, and nobody wanted. Everybody was sticking to my more normal stuff is like the 80, 100, $300 sort of book. That's what they look through. Oh, this is the stuff he cares about. So he wants to charge me more for it. I took that same binder to another show, and I put $40 on all of the pieces, and it was. I mean, to me, it was garbage. I mean, it is like it's artwork. It's good, but I didn't think people would want it, which is why I call it garbage. But they started flipping through the book and picking out little things, and actually, I was selling things out of the book that nobody would look at because I priced it at $5. So it's kind of weird when you're pricing things because people like the response. Going to conventions is like instant feedback, instant response. It's like if people are walking by, not even looking at you, it's like, all right, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not even getting attention? So there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to that, as far as like charging for your work.
That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
but for me, if anything, I try to get as much as I can for as little as I can. You
Well,
know?
that's a good. That's how you increase your profit margin,
well,
right?
yeah, and then I'll tell you where my this is okay. I'll be like Steve now. I've got a funny story. I did a signing, and it was free comic book day at our local comic shop. And this is when I've already got like a fair amount of, I'm kind of sure of myself a little bit more. It's just like I don't think of myself as the best dude in the world or anything like that. But it's like, okay, this is my stuff. This is how much I charge. That's just what it is. And people, hopefully, they like it. There were a couple other artists there that had little tables at the comic shop, and they were selling buttons and their comics, and we're all local guys. We all know each other, so we're joking around and stuff. So it's not like it was drama. It was happy time. But they were selling their stuff for like a couple bucks, buttons for $1, and then I was doing commissions for $80 a pop. And I wasn't really doing a lot because it's $80 a pop, right? So it's just like I had small things, and I had some books on my table. People would pick it up, and then it was just funny because the one artist came in. He's just like, "Oh, check Phil out with the $80." He said, "Yeah, I don't even look at you for less than $80." It's like, because he's selling everything on his table for $3, and he's just like, "What are you doing walking in here with your $80?" But I made a good bit of money, and I took a bunch of commissions home, because like as the day progressed, it got too late for me to actually finish things during the store hours, and they were just like, all right, like whatever. And it's not because you're better or worse than anybody else. It's just you just be confident that the way I look at it is, if I have collectors that are paying a certain amount, I've gotten to this point where if a collector is paying me $80, $100, or $200 for a piece of artwork, it's not because I have a chip on my shoulder that I'm going to force that onto other people. It's because it's not fair to the first person who thinks it's worth that much for me to charge way less for somebody who doesn't think it's worth. It's unfair to that first person. That first person will get angry with me because it's like, wow, you charged me $100 for this thing, and you're over here drawing them for $5 a pop now. Now, what's up with that? Why'd you take advantage of me?
So you started off determining your price structure based on what you were seeing over time come your way in terms of what you were selling through and what you weren't?
Right. Over time, the responses that I would get from people, when my embarrassment level started to diminish and my confidence started to rise a little bit, where it's just like I said, not the chip on the shoulder, I'm an artist, like I'm so great or anything like that. It's just that I'm confident. This is what I do. This is just how much it happens to be. And the market just kept on deciding how much it is. And if I was selling too many things for a cheaper price, then I would have to raise the price to almost kind of make a filter, because I wouldn't be able to finish all the work. And I'm also not making enough money. So by raising the price, I'm able to take a little bit more time and do better work for each person that was actually paying that price. And I was filtering out the people that wouldn't want to pay that much for it in the first place. But at the same time, I'm making more money than I would have if I draw 1 million pictures for $1 a piece, I'm a millionaire, right? So it's like, but at the same time, if I could draw half as many and do them better and actually spend more time on each piece, and I could be more proud of the work that I'm giving the person, and that person is actually happier by, when they get the piece, they're just like, wow, you took a long time to actually do this piece, like really good. Then that it gets beyond price at that point, and it becomes me trying to basically make the person buying the artwork happier and more willing to collect more of my art.
You're more offering and thinking about value at that point.
Because
cost and price, and because those are two different kinds of metrics.
There's always what you want to do, and then there's what you can do, and then wherever that point meets, that's how good the thing is going to be. So if you can actually, change the trajectory of that pie chart, to where the person getting the piece is going to be so much happier with it. And, and they paid more money for it, so it should be better. It should be like, I want to give people my best work. I want to give it to them and actually be proud of the fact that it's like, dude, I did this for you.
Yeah.
As opposed
always
to
over deliver.
That's always the goal. That's always the goal. And it's, if I do a quick little sketch and I just like rush through it and it's not my best, I'm actually embarrassed giving it to them.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like I'm taking advantage of that person at that point if I'm not trying to give them my best every time. So that's where the pricing, what you're buying is creative freedom. What you're buying is pride in your work. You're buying hopefully a piece of artwork that they'll want to keep longer and actually enjoy for a longer amount of time. So it's all those factors like come into play, and it's constantly fluid. It's like, so the more I hear from people, the more I charge, the more work I do, and this and that. So that's
Interesting. Yeah.
I tend to ramble, but hopefully that makes sense on some level. With
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Well, a
yeah.
lot of, in the comic book industry, most everything is done on a page rate basis, right?
Mhm.
And page rates can vary. And what I've done with storyboard is, although certain of my artist suppliers are located in the U.S., the majority of them are not. And for example, there are very, very talented artists in the Philippines. It's almost as if there's something in the water there. Seriously. This guy that he's done tremendous amount of work for Marvel, Francis Lanil Yu,
Oh yeah,
YU, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
He's Filipino, right? And in my company storyboard, I've got like 3 or 4 guys who live in the Philippines who are on his level, at least on his level, and they work for me. And what's good about that is the exchange rate. In other words, I can pay an artist in the Philippines a certain amount of money that an American based artist would never accept, because the exchange rate's so much better with the Philippines, right? So you got to also be on your toes as to how you can get projects done with talented people at the right amount, so that your clients are willing to do these projects, right? The guys that work for Marvel and DC, hey, there's a lot of talented people there. They make a very good page rate and they deserve it, right? But I might be paying about half of what a guy an artist, an American-based artist, because of the standard of living here, what it costs to live here, right? So, there's a lot of variables on this, but everybody's got to find their own way. Everybody's got to be satisfied with what they're making, or they, got to do something else.
That's something that helped me a little bit too. Just knowing what the standard rate was that other artists were charging. Kind of like listen in a little bit and maybe find out what other people are charging for certain things. As I was coming up, I was finding out what other people around me were charging for things. Sometimes, because I like to collect art too, so I go around Artist Alley and I go around and I pick up my things here and there, and I'm paying a certain amount of money for their work. So I'm like, so it gives me an idea. So that way, whatever it is I'm trying to charge for my work isn't so far out of the ballpark that I stick out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it helped guide me a little bit, but the feedback from collectors is what really kind of nails it to where it's going to be. Is like, this is how much they're willing to. This is what I'm worth to them, and the market is what decides that. I never decide that for myself.
Yeah, well, that's very true. Shrek says, I used to think time was my big barrier. Now that I have time, I've discovered that talent or lack thereof is my biggest barrier.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Talent. I mean, why has Bill been around so long and been as successful?
I'm not qualified to do anything else, Steve.
Well, that's good, because you shouldn't be doing anything else. Your life is about producing great art and great stories.
In between these Nera X issues, I'm doing 100-page graphic novels for Steve.
Yeah. Well, listen, you got to have the talent, right?
Hmm.
Just what your guy was saying there. You got to have the talent, and you got to have. You know what else an artist must have? Work ethic.
You know
Yeah.
what? Since
Work
since this
ethic.
is about obstacles in comics, and the work ethic is actually huge, because when you turn something you love into a job, you can actually kill your love for the thing. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to be a certain kind of person to be able to kind of like barrel through with something. Putting drawing a comic book is like, I love drawing my comic book. I love coming up with my stories. I love coming up with my characters. Oh, now there's a deadline. Now I have bills. Now I have to travel to a convention that costs money. Now I have to actually, Steve, you have to pay a letterer. You have to pay a colorist. It's like you're turning things into you have to monetize your time, and then it only works if you make a profit back. There's a lot of stress that goes into that turns the thing that you love into a quote unquote job, and sometimes not everybody wants to do the thing they love as a job. They
Right.
want to do the thing they love as their hobby, and it's not because they're not as good at it. It's because it's sucking the joy out of it for them specifically. For some people, they love the business aspect of it. It's like, actually, for me, having that deadline and stuff, because I love to do it so much, I'm just like, and plus, part of my drug, part of my high, is seeing my comic on a shelf at a shop. You know, so being able to make that and actually see it there, and see, like I'm looking around to see if anybody's looking at it, even if nobody's buying it off the shelf, I know that it's there. It's like
Yeah.
that was my drug. That was what continues to push me to make the next one, because I want to
That
be.
was it until I went back a month later and I said, "Why is that still there?" Then I got over that real quick.
Well, they
Right
must
on.
have ordered more.
Yes.
Have to keep them in stock. See.
Now,
You know.
Shrek, I know Shrek, you're a man of science. I'm going to give you an equation.
Okay.
Belief plus learning plus work ethic plus time equals talent. I am a firm believer that talent is not something you're just born with. Now, people might get a little bit of a head start in some capacity, but I've seen tremendous amount of talented people squander their talent or not take it far enough to
Yeah.
reach its full potential. But
Yeah.
if you have a lot of time, that's seriously probably the biggest thing, the biggest part of the equation that is so difficult to come by. So if you've got the belief in yourself and the belief that you want to do what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. If you're willing to learn what you need to learn to get there, that's
Mm-hmm.
great too. Now you got to apply it. So you need the work ethic. If you've got that and then you've got the time, you're going to get the talent.
Agreed.
So be patient
Agreed.
with yourself and you'll get there.
Agreed.
Right. 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 Well, again, this is all about obstacles and choices, persistence, belief in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a heady mix, and some people thrive on that, and others realize that, hey, like Bill was saying, maybe it's just best if they do their art for fun, right? They have a day job, they do something else, and then when they're working on their comics, they're doing it for the pure love. It has nothing to do with having to succeed in the marketplace. Uh, but the three of us, we're heavily in the marketplace. I
Plus,
mean, that's
you never know
that's
that
the that's the
that.
choice that we took. That's
Mhm.
the path that we took, and so it's as much a business as it is a creative labor of love. It's both
Now, if
things.
that person that does it for fun and does it for love creates their magnum opus, they create a 200-page masterpiece, give it to somebody to sell, and that could be like your $1 million thing. It's like you can always turn it into a money making thing after you're done creating it. But the bump and grind of creating something every single month, every single couple of months, that could wear people down. It's like there's a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
And I think that's something too that the industry at large, between the gluttonous aspect of pushing out a tremendous amount of product, flooding the
Yeah.
market, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
there's a multitude of things that occupy the time of any given customer at any given moment.
Yep.
We don't need to have a comic industry where we're just cranking out product 24/7.
Right.
If
exactly.
anything, there's too much product. There's not enough stores, and then there's also not enough. Like, and I've seen this happen a lot across the board with a lot of different products and a lot of different industries. It seems like the laws of supply and demand are completely out the window.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes it seems as if like the thing that there's no demand for is far more expensive and to acquire than the thing that there's a ton of demand for. And I know economies of scale play into
Right.
that depending on what the
Right,
product
right.
is. But it's a very confusing thing when it comes to comics because there's more product now than there ever was before. Like it like as if there's this strong demand for it. But then when you go into the average comic shop, you see that the walls and the store in itself, it looks like a hoarder's paradise. And it
Yeah.
shouldn't look that way. It should be a store.
Right.
It should be,
right.
you know, there's product coming in, product coming out constantly.
Yeah.
It's never just piling up like
Right.
an Egyptian tomb
Yeah.
that you need to go into and, you know, tomb raid every now and then. But I'm not saying you should do it at the comic shop. But, you know,
Right,
that's
right,
the
right.
thing to me that's so puzzling. So I think this way with crowdfunding, especially if creators can get in a sweet spot of maybe 2 or 3 at the most crowdfunding releases per year
Right.
on this,
Right.
you know, quarterly or triannual or biannual
Right.
kind of way, I think that's great. And if every
Yeah,
creator was kind of going about it that way, I think that'd be perfect because you'd have that nice balance between a sustainable industry and something that doesn't feel as if we're in this mode of we're just getting product out to get product out. Because even if you think about all the great comic issues that have been out there throughout the course of every comic issue ever made, if you think about your favorite character from, let's say, the bigger companies, how many issues would you say were a 7 out of 10 or better?
Right. Right.
You know, I'm pretty sure probably people can only say maybe 20, 30% of those issues.
Of course.
You know,
course.
so
a lot
so
of wheel
yeah,
spinning in between. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
There is
and-
there is an interesting phenomenon I've noticed, and I don't think anyone has really discussed this much yet. So I'll open up kind of an interesting area here. Remember, of course, let's go back to the start of Image. Okay. Now, the guys from Image pretty much all worked at Marvel and maybe a few at DC, but mainly Marvel, right? Then they decided one day we're leaving the corporate world and we're going to start our own publishing company, right? Now, I've noticed something of late, and I wonder if you guys have noticed this, and if some of the viewers have noticed this. We're not going to mention any names now, okay? No names whatsoever. I don't roll that way. There's an image-like phenomenon that has now, in my estimation, begun to occur in the crowdfunding world. And what it is certain artists, writers, creative people who have made a name for themselves primarily through, major publishers are now entering the crowdfunding world. I don't know. And what's happened is it's sort of like the same phenomenon that happened with Image. When McFarlane, Liefeld, those guys, those names, of course, we can mention, started Image, they were banking on the fact that, they already had a built-in audience from the major publisher, right? I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. I see the same thing happening, and I'm not putting a judgment on it. I'm just trying to point out a phenomenon I've begun to notice. The same thing that happened with Image is now happening in the crowdfunding world. Guys with established names working on established properties are now taking that audience not to an Image in publishing, so to speak, but to crowdfunding. Have you guys noticed that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this just sort of kind of tells you how the wild world of capitalism, which is a great system, don't get me wrong, is constantly churning, right? Meaning, a good few years ago, this phenomenon had not happened at all. It was basically indie people crowdfunding their books, in an alternate way to get the books funded and out. But now, established people are now coming in droves to crowdfunding. Again, I'm not putting a judgment on it. I'm just pointing something
No,
out.
if anything, I'm always surprised that there aren't more, and
Yeah.
and across more industries too.
Right. Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and especially the bigger the name, I would imagine, why not go independent at that point? You
Yeah.
Exactly.
know, it's
Exactly.
you don't
Go
need
right. Go right
the
to the
record
fans.
label
Cut out.
or the
Yeah. Cut
studio
out your
system
middleman.
or
And,
the
right.
you
Right.
know,
Right.
like if anything, I think we're gonna, and I think we'll eventually see it that way, but we're gonna see a very odd thing where a large independent market will be
Yeah.
comprised of people who've been established, whereas the corporate market will then be a lot of people who are not really established, and that's like a
Yeah.
proving ground to become established. And then eventually the establishing factor at the corporate ground isn't really going to matter anymore because the independent proving ground has been around for so long and is so accepted that a lot of people will just go straight to it. And if
Right.
the corporate, whatever it is, the corporation that's there, can't adapt into that system, I don't know how much longer they would have. So even when it comes to things like YouTube, I'm always shocked. There's a couple people obviously that are doing it and doing it really well to get, whether it's a movie out there, a show, sketch comedy is really good with YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
But it could be a juggernaut that brings broadcasting networks to its knees, movie studios to its knees, by eliminating all kinds of red tape and a large amount of the obstacles that would generally be in the face of creators. But I think
Yeah, isn't
we'll
that-
get there.
Isn't
Yeah.
that sort of what's happened with the streaming media? In other words,
But they're trying like mad to get that control back.
Oh, I know. But the canary in the coal mine is to make like an old reference, right? Like I was born in the 1850s or something. uh, but the canary in the coal mine is my daughter and I watch more YouTube. She definitely watches more YouTube than regular TV or movies. Like YouTube wins by a landslide. She'll have YouTube on all the time. We've got a couple of shows that we watch together. Like we watch Game Grumps. We watch, there's a bunch of different things that we like to watch. And I'm just like, when's the last time I actually sat down? I don't have my TV lineup like I used to have, like in the 90s or the 80s.
Right.
I used to have my Knight Rider 18 Greatest American Hero
Right.
lineup. Like that was my Wednesday. It's like, wasn't that's changing. That's changing.
Oh,
big
yeah.
time. And,
Well,
so-
this is why evolve or die is kind of where I believe the world is at right now. Evolve or die. The playing field is continuously evolving and changing. Right.
Back when I had gills.
And that's why we're on Kickstarter right now. I mean, I resisted Kickstarter for a very long time until I realized this is the wave of the future.
You
Right?
got to go where the people are. You got to go where are people actually looking for their new comics or looking for new ideas or looking for, I see the bigger company books pulling back at a time when everybody's like, why are you guys pulling back? It's like, we want some comics. We were kind of hoping for comics, and all of these independents are now finding a niche to actually grow on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and Fund My Comic and all that good stuff. So I'm
I
not
heard
glad
there's
they're
an-
pulling back, but at the same time, it's making a larger field for me to kind of like expand and do my thing. So it's like, I don't want to say I'm grateful that they're pulling back, but it is making more space. It's like it's making more space for indies to grow. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I got a really good question here from Comics for Life. It says, which is harder to overcome, outside obstacles or personal obstacles?
yeah, that's good.
And the answer is
Good question.
yes.
The answer is
Yeah.
yes.
Both. Both.
Both.
I mean, everyone, this expression that people are like snowflakes. Every one of us is different, right? Um, it's a heady mix. What motivates and what's running around in a person's mind and soul and
Mhm.
heart.
Yeah. Well,
And
we talked about a lot of the outside stuff already, but a lot of the personal stuff is like, especially for, I work from home. That's already a problem. And I've worked
what?
from home for 30 years, minus a couple of day jobs here and there in between this to sustain me because my child was a baby, you know. She's 26 now, so I don't care. So I'm just going to work at home. But it's like working
Yeah.
from home is already hard because you don't have this set schedule. You don't have a structure to your day that's maintained by somebody looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, you got to be good at defining that for yourself. Otherwise, it
Yeah,
could go bad real fast.
and it doesn't look like you have a day job. So nobody takes my job seriously until I owe them money, and all of a sudden they need something. Then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, why don't you give me this thing here? You owe me some money for this? It's like, well, how about you leave me alone and let me do my job? This is like
Yeah.
I need to do this for 12 hours a day, and
Yeah.
then I'll get some of that money. So there's
I think that question,
a lot
that
of
very
personal
good,
obstacles.
that very good pointed question about, what is more significant, personal, internal or external obstacles. That's a question for like a therapist. I don't think you
Yeah,
can
this
really
is this is an
answer that.
existential
Yeah,
conversation
you
today.
go through a
Totally
mix of both.
existential
Yeah, I know.
because if
Spiritually,
someone has
speaking. Yeah.
if someone has a severe mental issue, okay, well, that's going to override everything, right? But then there could be someone who's very balanced, very zen, as it were, very calm, very, does his job every day. But then some gigantic obstacle, God forbid, a health obstacle, for example,
Yeah, that's
comes
always a
into
thing.
your
Yeah.
life. You can't expect. That's the thing about life. You get up every day, you don't know what's going to happen that day.
Well, like I live at my parents' house. That's where I live now. And one of the reasons is I became a single parent back in 2000. So I was like, oh, I needed help. But shortly after, I was like, cool. It's like I got on my feet. Everything's cool. Got past the Jerry Springer situation. My kid's good. I'm good. We're going to move back to San Diego because that San Diego is where I'm happy. Is where I'd like to live, even though it's more expensive. Damn you, San Diego. But I needed to stay home. My mom got Alzheimer's and dementia, and my dad couldn't handle that by himself. They helped me when I really needed help in a spot. Not to mention, it's your parents. So, and being a Puerto Rican family, a lot of people living in the same house, it's not that odd. So,
Not at all.
so we stayed, and we lost her in 2015, and I had this work-life balance that the first half of my day was all about her, so that way my dad could have some space, and it was good because I actually got to spend like a really meaningful, special time with her every day. It's like until that time finally came, and after we lost her in 2015, it's like my dad's health has been. So I'm just like, you know what? We're just kind of in this for the long haul. I think we're just here for a minute, and that's where we've been. We just stay here. He's doing good. I mean, it's nothing's crazy is going on, but he needs more help. He can't be by himself. You can't. I see
Yeah,
that day
yeah.
coming, and we've got a roof over our head. And everything else we take care of. We help with the bills and do all the things. So there's lots of obstacles, lots of personal obstacles between health, family, everything else that's in your life that could possibly pop up. And if it's something negative and you're trying to draw a parody, there's an obstacle. I'm trying to make jokes while I'm feeling, completely opposite, that sort of thing, which, sometimes that actually helped. That actually helped to like find a sense of humor out of all of the garbage that was going on at the time. Life can throw you some things.
Yeah.
It
So
always
in a-
does.
Oh, it always does.
invariably,
Yeah, it
you
always
know.
does. You have to deal with
Yeah,
life regardless. So, without a sense of
yeah,
humor, I think I couldn't, a sense of humor made it a whole lot easier. And being able to escape into my comic book stories made it a lot easier. Being able to concentrate on my daughter growing up. She's 26 now, but seeing her grow up and being that single parent from the time she was 2, that was a lot of obstacles there. So it's like, so anytime you see somebody who's seems like it's all successful, you only see us during a live stream when everything's great. We're doing a Kickstarter, you know.
After that, it's Meltdown City.
After that, it's in between all of the. Well, I forgot what movie it was. There was a movie where somebody was going off on some existential crisis where they were looking through a photo album, and they're like, the photo album shows all the happy pictures, but there's no pictures that show what's in between those happy pictures. It's all the hard times, in between all those happy pictures. It's just a snapshot. So yeah, there's obstacles, and you have to find joy in the middle of it. And
Oh,
you have
yeah.
to bring happiness from here. I don't go to anybody else to make me complete. You bring the happiness to the group, and then the group adds to you. You have to decide, and it's not easy. I mean, I'm not
yeah.
saying
Well, that's why
it's
the
some easy
comic book
thing.
the comic book world is like a community, right? And
Mm-hmm.
nobody is an island, right? So it's
Yeah,
like working with like-minded people
yeah,
is
yeah.
what fuels a large part of what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, okay, what Massive Panda says. I know what you all mean. A lot of people won't take your work seriously unless you're in a suit and tie. As far as people are concerned, you're just having fun. But that's not the case at all. Very true.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. If somebody comes up to me in the house and they're just like, "Hey, you're goofing off," it's just like, dude, I got to finish 24 more pages before you can even talk to me. Lately, I'm in the factory. Let me go to work.
Yeah, that's
And
I find that's a perspective issue.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that we kind of take each other for granted, and
Mhm.
we don't take ourselves sometime as seriously as we should. Not that you should take yourself that serious, but there's almost like a respect issue even sometimes for ourselves, and
Mhm.
and often that can sometimes leak out. I've seen that happen a bunch where
mm,
people don't respect the work that they do and they downplay it, they talk bad about it, they talk everything is self-deprecating, and they kind of make it like it's a joke, but
mm,
it oftentimes isn't a joke. It's them
Mhm.
masking that they
Mhm.
feel some kind of a lesser than
Mhm.
others because they have let others shape their identity, shape who
Right,
they are.
right, right.
Instead of having a stronger sense of self or a stronger sense of purpose or whatever that might be. And yeah, we are going to have some kind of existential conversation when it comes to all these things because I see that there's a lot of creators out there at the very least that are going through these kinds of things that feel like maybe
Mhm.
they didn't earn what they've achieved, or whatever they've achieved doesn't matter in the scope of things, or what they're doing isn't really a big deal because I'm just making up stories all day and that's not really important, and so all these things. I've had conversations with people where I've had to talk to them, and a lot of them
Mhm.
obviously privately, but about the importance of this kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
letting
yeah.
them know that it doesn't mean you should think yourself superior than anyone else. Absolutely
No,
not.
no, of course
no.
But
not.
you
Yeah.
shouldn't think yourself less than either.
Right, right.
Mm.
Well, you think about art, you think about music, you think about things, creative things like that. I forgot who it was that actually said this. I'm stealing this. This is from somebody else. You probably seen a meme or something like this about this. But the idea that art and music or comics in this case, right? It's an escapism. You escape into this story so you can get away for 5 minutes and actually enjoy yourself for a time with these characters or whatever. There's the idea that it's a superficial or a shallow, non-important thing. But at the same time, when you're feeling a certain way, you're feeling sad or you're feeling happy or feeling in between some sort of way, it becomes sustenance. It becomes something that you actually need for a moment.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden the art becomes important. It becomes, like somebody hearing a sad song. They're going through something, and
Exactly.
that sad song was just
It's
whatever
comfort
song.
food for the soul.
Right,
Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, look at all the streaming media and movies and everything. I mean, it essentially, call it escapism. Okay, if escapism means getting out of your daily head of work routine, but if this wasn't important, how would these industries be so huge? It's clear that entertainment is critical to keeping your life in some form of balance. You have to have entertainment in your life. You have to be able to get out of your head sometimes and just be distracted and get away from the quote unquote real world. Hence the movie industry, hence comic books,
Sure,
hence the
sure.
streaming media, the whole publishing world. These is a these are huge industries, but industries only survive and persist if they're effective, if they're working, right? And so what does the advertising industry do? Okay, all of these streaming shows or whatever, it's all you're either watching ads or paying for a subscription, right? And this is a huge sports. Football apparently is the most watched program of all, right? And now the women's, the WNBA, is now becoming incredibly powerful. These things don't happen unless they're needed. You fill a need and it happens. If there's no need, it goes away. So there's obviously a need for entertainment and distraction.
Well, it's a good point to remind creatives who don't feel like they're valuable in creating their work, whatever that work happens to be, if it's artwork, comics, music, whatever. Your work actually is. It doesn't matter what level you're at. It doesn't matter if you're not making money at it. It doesn't matter if only one other person sees it. It's like what you're doing is actually important, and I think that's a good. This is a good reminder. This topic is a good reminder for creatives out there that don't think that they're important or that they're
Right.
contributing. That's one of the things that kind of that lingers in my mind is like, am I contributing? For me, like the comic book industry, am I making a big enough, not to be the most famous guy or the best guy or anything like that, but I want to be somebody who contributes like something substantial to the industry. It's like, oh, like these comics were good. I like them. Like just me getting that is, and just knowing that people enjoy it.
Yeah, you want to leave a legacy. You want to make your mark.
Right.
You want to have a positive impact on others.
Right, exactly. But if you feel like you're not, if you don't have a way of knowing whether or not if your stuff is out there, somebody's seen it and it's important to somebody. It's like, even if you don't know it, even if you haven't, sometimes you don't
Oh,
get
yeah.
that feedback like we do. I go to a comic book convention and people are buying things off the table and telling, I'm lucky enough that I get to have that feedback. But a lot of people don't, and they're not in a position to be able to get feedback. They put their stuff out there, and there's so many digital ways for us to put our things out there where the world can see it. And I guarantee that there's lots of people seeing your work, and it's important. It's important for people to express themselves and do their art and put it out there, because there is somebody out there who's getting something from it that they need.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
And you may never know who that person is, but they're out there.
Oh yeah, yeah. You never
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Heroinberg says, great to see creators of Zen and Nira X on your show, Pete. I got the first Zen trade from Steve at Northeast Con a couple of years ago,
Wow.
and he was very nice. Also backed the Nira X campaign. Best wishes, guys.
Oh, thanks so much, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So this was I lived in Maine for like 2020, 2021. That's when I did that con that Gary Summers runs that con. So yeah, I
Was that
remember
the one that was
That's-
in like Wakefield, Massachusetts, around there?
Yeah, yeah. That was
Nice.
great. Yeah. And, I've been talking about getting feedback. I've been very fortunate because I've done, well, hundreds, if not thousands, over the 37 years, appearances at conventions and stores, and met thousands and thousands of people who appreciate what I do. And so, sometimes it's the people who played the video games, sometimes it's people that collect the toys, comic book readers. And, that's what fuels me. That's why I'm just going to keep doing this till I drop. In all honesty, in all honesty, I'll never stop.
Right there with you. Right there with
Yeah.
you.
I plan to go either on my drawing table or on a live stream. So don't be freaked out. Just know that I died happy.
It'll be like,
Man,
I don't think
this has
I
got
don't
to
think
be
it's
like that.
glitching out. I think
Hopefully, I'll be like
dead.
old and withered. I'm not just to be over here all diabetic on my
This
table.
this
Just
must
kind
be
of.
the heaviest conversation I've had in a very long time.
That's what we
I
do
think it's
here. Yeah, yeah.
very
If
heavy.
you're a regular viewer, we do heavy conversations here. I try to get
Yes.
into the nitty gritty on
Yeah,
this
well,
show. You know
Good,
yeah.
good.
what's
That's what
going
life
on
is.
behind just the fun of creating, and what
Yeah,
motivates you, what makes you tick, what have you been up against in life. Because I find that's a topic that resonates with a lot of people too. I really like hearing about that. I like hearing about how many things people have been up against and how they've overcome them. Those are the stories I like to to
yeah,
watch and or read, and that's the kind of stuff I love to hear people talk about, because everyone's got a tale to tell when it comes to that, and I think
sure.
that really resonates with a lot of people, especially the more you know about the superficial level of stuff, the more interesting it is to hear all the behind the scenes, because everything we create too is, when you're reading, it's like a time capsule for your life. These
Yeah.
stories you got into, that character, this movie, this music, these are all time capsules, little markers in your life.
Yeah,
But when you create, it's the same thing. So for someone that means something to them, but for you, when you created it, you were going through X, Y, and Z during your life when you were making this thing, and that's always interesting to hear. I love hearing that type of
This
stuff.
is the equivalent of me looking through some black and white photos of like the cast from the original Star Trek, like goofing off behind set, you know, or having
Yeah,
lunch in between like takes or something like that. It's just you kind of feel like, oh man, it's like it's the only way that you could have been a part of that. Just the working environment, or as a creative person, is like, oh, to play that role or to be a part of that particular show, or to be. This is, and it's cool.
absolutely.
We couldn't have done this back in the '90s. So I'm glad that we have technology on our side for stuff like this.
Now, I got one question here from the chat, and then I have one question to close out the show with you guys. I'm going to get to
okay.
this one here in the chat. I'm going to include Steve with this too, but not for drawing, but for writing. Bill and Pete, what do you guys do to warm up or get in the mood for drawing/writing? Because for me, I'll have times where my mind goes blank on what to draw, but I want to draw. So, Bill, Steve, think
Yeah.
about that for a second in terms of,
Yeah.
how do you get your inspiration, your motivation, whatever it may be, to do the job that must be done, whatever that is. And,
So,
yeah,
sometimes
fire away.
sometimes I get completely away from the thing I'm supposed to be doing. Sometimes I'll sit down with a video game. So maybe I got to finish Tomb Raider. Maybe I got to do something to get me creative in a space. And because it's kind of I want to make sure that I'm kind of in a fun space when I'm sitting down to create. Because a lot of times what I think about, especially like right now, I'm working on Zen Bounty Wars, right? So I'm looking at Steve's script, and I'm kind of pretending that I'm the cameraman. I'm rotating the camera. It's like, all right, panel 4, the characters are doing this. How do I do that so that this character is speaking when he's supposed to? Because sometimes if you put the characters in the wrong spot, I can't switch the balloons around. So I'm like the cameraman walking around trying to figure out what angle I want to capture this scene at. Like I have little actors on my stage, Um, sometimes I'll grab pizza. Sometimes it's as simple as you don't want to just jump to the art table when you're in a bad mood and your mind is blank and you're not really like thinking like in line with the kind of stuff you want to be producing. So kind
Yeah,
of
I
get
think
into it.
the one piece of advice about that I've heard across the board from people like Hemingway, Gaiman, other people. Get a routine. You got to sit down and write every damn day. Okay. Now, Hemingway did it with a big bottle of whiskey and cigars and cigarettes. I just have the computer here. But if you don't sit in front of your writing implement, whether it's a typewriter, a pen, a pencil, a pad, a computer, whatever, if you don't sit in front of it every day and you lose that rhythm, you could be in big trouble. Big trouble. So I do write. I write a little bit every day. Doesn't have to be a lot.
I've heard that for writing a lot. Yeah, I've heard that. And another thing too is your space, your work environment. There is luckily we put a room above the garage. We have a 2-car garage. We put one big space above the garage, and this is where I come to. This is where I come to play video games too. But this is where I come to work. So my studio used to be like in my room, like in my bedroom or in the dining room kind of situation like that. And this is like an across the board kind of thing. If you ask people in general, it's if you have a room where you do, like in the bedroom, I sleep, I chill out, I watch TV, I'm done. So sometimes when I'm in my room, I don't feel like drawing. I feel like chilling out, sleeping, watching TV until I'm done. As soon as I come up to the studio, because this is where I'm either packing things for a Kickstarter, I'm drawing, I'm airbrushing, I've got my art supplies. This is only, art stuff and possibly Tomb Raider, maybe some Halo. So when I come up here, like just mentally, like this is like I put on my shoes. When I have my shoes on, that my body knows that I'm supposed to be awake for one thing. Right. So I just can't be walking around the house with slippers and stuff. So that's another thing that kind of messes me up. So I come up to the studio, and the studio is, I've got anime statues, I've got artwork on the walls. It's set up to where it's like I'm just surrounded by artwork and things that create that environment for me. So if you're drawing in your dining room, pull out all the dining room stuff and just deck it out and piss people off and hang up artwork.
Right. It's all part of routine.
It's part of the routine. It's part of the routine. And my structure is horrible. I wake up when, I stay up super late because I'm inspired. I want to finish something. So it's 4 a.m. Sun's coming up sometimes because I wanted to finish something while I still had the energy to do it. So my sleep schedule routine, I would be a horrible writer to be actually have a structured routine. But at least the space that I've got set up for myself to work, and it doesn't matter how big or small your space is, it just needs to be a singular space that when you go to that space, that's what you do when you're there. I don't do anything else when I'm at this table. I don't do my taxes up here. I'm not up here eating my pizza and doing a bunch of, this is where I concentrate on art. I'm on the computer. Everything is geared for what I'm doing. So if that helps people out there as far as like just set aside a space that is specifically what you use it for.
What about yourself, Peter? I'm curious as to your routine or your thoughts on this.
Well, I definitely think you gotta develop the habit, and you develop the habit through the routine and the repetition and all of that. Now, what that's like for everyone is going to be different. For me, what I do personally, if it's drawing, I do it differently than when I do writing. For writing, I usually put on some music. For drawing, I usually put on either a movie I've seen 1,000 times in the background, a show, whatever it may be. And sometimes I'll go through a phase of them. So sometimes it'll be a certain series or a certain franchise of films or a certain kind of film. Right now I'm in like a paranormal kind of zone where I got like Ancient Aliens on all the time. Cool. So it's one of the, and that'll be like for where I am with drawing. And I'll have that on, and it gets me kind of flowing. It gets me in a different state. For writing,
soundtracks.
Yeah.
What about writing?
For writing, I put music on, and usually, and I've said this before on streams, when I'm writing King Cryptid, for some reason, Dean Martin does things to me. It gets me in a different. Dean
Martin, wow.
Yeah. Dean Martin gets me in a different mindset, and I can write. It calms me down here, so I can just get into the characters.
I think that's so cool. Yeah. Because he was one of the coolest human beings I've ever encountered, right?
Oh yeah, I was
He
lucky
just-
enough to interview his daughter Dina the other day
Oh,
on
that's
Monday,
cool.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
that
Oh,
was
really?
great. Yeah,
Yeah, sweet.
but
Was she as
absolutely, yeah.
cool as her dad? Was she as cool as her dad? Or?
I don't think anyone's as cool as Dean, but you know,
Right.
she was up there. She was great, and she had some awesome stories too. I hope I can get to spend a little more time with her in a few months or so, do another interview. But yeah, so I love
that's
Dean
amazing.
Martin, Sinatra, all those guys. I also love instrumentals. I love Beethoven. I love a lot of classical music, and then I love for some other things. And it's weird because it depends what kind of story am I writing today.
Yeah,
I
for
listen
sure.
to the
Yeah.
opposite of what this if it's an intense action, this and that or whatever.
Yeah.
I listen to quieter music.
Really.
If it's
That's
it's
kinda
more
cool.
of if it's
A
kind
little
of
mirror
like
image. Yeah.
a more character-driven, sorrowful kind of thing. I listen to faster-paced music, maybe some AC/DC, or I put on like ELO
Yeah.
or whatever else, you know.
You know
but
what I can't
that's
do?
what I find. I listen to like the converse of
That's
whatever the
really,
mood is.
That's really interesting. I don't know what to make of that.
I don't know either. I'm an anomaly.
You know what I absolutely can't? I can't listen to music. It's got to be soundtrack. If I'm writing, if I'm drawing, it's okay. But if I'm writing, I can't listen to music that has words in it. It's got to be soundtracks. It's got to be classical movie soundtracks. It's got to be something without words. Because as soon as I start listening to the lyrics, it messes up what I'm thinking for what I'm writing.
That's
It
funny.
jumbles me up. Yeah, I just can't put it in the background.
Yeah, everybody's different. Everyone's
Yeah.
different, but it's whatever. There's always a routine to it, like what Steve
Yeah.
had said. And you know, find what your routine is. Find what gets you comfortable with being creative. You know, that you can get your subconscious to kind of quiet a little bit, and let
Yeah.
your conscious mind create. You know, because if your subconscious is over there like you're thinking in overdrive and doesn't shut the hell up, you know, you got to kind of subdue it a bit and
Yeah.
get your conscious mind to take over
Put
and
it
be
in
like,
the
this is what
headlock.
we're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just tell you one quick thing because I know, as usual, we've already talked over 90 minutes, right? But I'll just tell you one thing. Environmentally, right, there's this Starbucks that's in Santa Monica, in this beautiful section of Santa Monica on a great street called Ocean Park. I go sit out on any sunny day, which it's usually sunny here, not always. I sit outside the Starbucks and this great plaza in Santa Monica, and that's where I get the bulk of my creative writing done. So anybody walking down Ocean Park will know that the Starbucks. Come by and say hi.
Very nice. Look at that.
There you go.
Hey, Barry Duffield here. It says, Steve did an
Barry.
incredible job in adapting my graphic novel, Dead Man's Land. Great guy.
Barry,
Look
I
at that.
can't believe Barry is a
Awesome.
great actor. He was on Spartacus. Okay, great
Fantastic.
guy. I don't know if he's out here. He's from Australia or New Zealand. I'm not really sure which. Tell us, Barry. Barry's just an amazing actor and great bodybuilder and great creative force. And it's amazing to see him here.
That's cool.
Didn't know
Super
he
cool.
tuned into your very cool show.
Fantastic. I think he's here for you guys. He must have saw you. He's coming in from Twitter over here. So, he must have saw your name and figured, hey, I'll drop in and say hello.
Barry is a great actor and creative force.
So he's still in New Zealand.
Zealand. There you go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Say hi to Susan.
There you
Great
go. That's
actor.
wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Shrek. Appreciate that. And I'm glad this advice helped you out, Omni. Appreciate it. Yeah, find whatever
cool.
works for you, get in your groove, and go to town, man. Have some fun creating. Now, one question, the big question I have for you guys here.
Yeah.
This is a question that I've dealt with over the years a lot.
I'll put on my DJ voice.
Okay. So, when it comes to especially new creators, but every creator goes through this, and some of them, no matter how long they've been doing this, they still battle with this. Overcoming rejection. Some creators put everything in the world onto that, and they really let it demoralize them, tear them down. But the thing is, rejection, I firmly believe, is a no that's really a yes. It's pointing you down a positive path. You just don't realize it at the time. For you guys, though, specifically, and you, Steve or Bill, you can go first. It depends. Whoever wants, whoever's got something ready to say. What kind of advice do you guys want to give out there to creators about overcoming rejection?
Go ahead, Bill.
Rejection is awful. You should let it destroy you immediately. No, it's you grow a thicker skin with time. Just be patient, because rejection comes to everybody. I mean, it leaves nobody unscathed, because whatever it is that you do, it's not going to please everybody, and there's always going to be somebody who thinks there's a better way that you should do things. There's always going to be somebody who just simply doesn't like it. So that comes with time. That comes with pilot hours. I think the way that I trained myself, well, I didn't choose to train myself this way. This is something that accidentally happened to me. Is simply putting yourself out there to get more input from people. So the way that it happened to me, which was by accident, I became a caricature artist at SeaWorld in San Diego, California. When I first got this, I was actually airbrushing T-shirts at a mall, and a guy came to me out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey, you want to draw caricatures at SeaWorld?" And it's like, "Yeah, that sounds like a job." So it's like, so we did that, and I was the first guy he hired. It was like an outside vendor, and we actually created the technique and stuff that all these different theme parks use. But for the first 6 months, I was terrible. I was the first guy, and I was actually sweating bullets every time somebody sat down, because I knew it was just going to suck. And then I was going to ask them for money when I was done, and then they were going to look at it. And there was a couple of people that were just like, "I kind of don't want this." It's like, that's how bad it was. It's like, you're at a theme park. They had free beer because Anheuser-Busch bought the park recently, and they still didn't want it. So it's like, that was harsher boot camp than most people will go through. Usually you go to a comic book convention, you show your portfolio, or even like you were showing people like your work. You make a little comic book, you make a painting, you make whatever it is that you make, and some people will like it, some people will be maybe a little pandering. It's like, because it's like, "Oh, that looks really nice, but I'd never pay actual money for it." It's like, but they'll pat you on the back and try to make you feel better about it. But it comes with time. So don't lose hope. Don't lose your patience. Don't lose your self-worth, because it is actually a very, very natural part of the process of putting yourself out there in the first place. And then when you start getting those positive reactions, you're through the roof. It inspires you to do even better. It inspires you to do more. It inspires you to reach different levels that you couldn't have reached other. It's almost like the old saying where you wouldn't be able to appreciate a nice sunny day unless you had a bunch of rainy days. Yeah. And not that I'm the Crow, it can't rain all the time or anything like that. But that's kind of how it works out most of the time. And there's variations on that whole theme, but basically just be patient, keep on putting yourself into it. It's hard when you put your heart and soul into something, and then somebody just like, kind of steps on it. Because it makes you feel worthless. It'll make you feel like, like I shouldn't even be doing this kind of situation. But don't.
Okay.
You can't let it keep you down. It's
Right.
like Steve says, persistence, continuing forward, continuing the craft. Continue doing it because you love to do it. It's an expression that comes out of you.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Steve's got something.
Steve, what
on his-
about you?
Steve's got something
I
on his-
think it might have been Stephen King who said, got 1,000 rejections, but you only need one acceptance, right? So the way I have always looked at it, and this has to do with, believing in yourself and being persistent. Every time I would get a rejection, my attitude was, that person's stupid. They rejected me. Okay. I just, I have to believe, I have no one else to believe in but myself, right? I'm a singularity here, as we all are, walking on the face of the earth. So every time I would get a rejection, I just said to myself, well, they lost out on me.
They don't know what they're missing.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly, and I've had my fair share of rejections. I recently wrote a novel that has nothing to do with comics or Zen or anything like that, and I've started to, get some rejections on it, and just believing that the people that are rejecting it, they're missing out on something really good, because I have to believe that what I'm writing is good. If I don't think what I'm writing is good and valuable and worthwhile and should be seen by a wider audience, then why am I doing it? Right? So I've just kind of got this egotistical idea that if somebody's rejecting me, that's their problem.
Now, a follow up for you, Steve. Have you ever been in a situation where you received feedback from it and then you go, oh, you know what? They kind of got a point. I got to
Oh,
work
sure.
on that.
Oh yeah, I've had feedback, and I look at feedback as, I take it for what it's worth. Sometimes it's not worth much in my estimation, and in other times it's invaluable. So every situation is its own. But yes, I'm a big believer in getting feedback. Yeah, sure. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. You and
Yeah,
then you'll
never.
you'll
Yeah, you never.
process it.
Yeah, you never think that there's nothing left for you to learn. I mean, it's like
Of
you don't
course.
approach it, especially somebody starting out. I mean, this is obviously a question. I think it's presented from the point of view of somebody who's a little earlier in the career. Like asking a question like that. Never approach it like you know everything. Definitely take the gold nuggets
Nobody
out of.
does.
Yeah, exactly. Especially right now, I know this is how I know I've gained wisdom. I know exactly. Well, I don't know exactly, but I know that there's a lot that I don't know, and I'll
Yeah.
probably never know.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I've had to have peace with myself on that. But knowing how much you don't know, and knowing how much there is to learn still, that's a point
That's a paraphrasing of a Socrates quote there, Bill.
oh,
It is.
I knew it was from something smart.
He's a philosopher. The man's a philosopher. What can I tell you?
It was part of Socrates'
Yeah,
So
yeah.
philosophy.
great.
So great. Man, oh
But
man.
it's so true. I mean, it's like it's easy to humble yourself, and it's easier to improve if you're willing to actually not have the chip on your shoulder and
And by the way,
Absolutely.
Peter, while we've been online, a few more people have pledged. Thank you.
thanks so
I'm
much,
sure they're
everybody.
direct from the show. And now we're down to 70 hours. When you first looked at it, it was 71 hours. So we're
Yeah.
counting down the hours now.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
Awesome. I'm
sir.
going to put the link here. This is for Zen Bounty Wars #1. So, yeah,
Yay!
like Steve just said, there's 70 hours left on this campaign. 160 backers are on board. I think I said 158 when we first talked
Yep,
about it.
it
Yeah, I think so
was.
too.
Right.
Yep.
But so that's wonderful. I'm glad we got 2 backers during the course of the show. If you guys backed and you're in the show, fantastic. Thank you so much. If not, thank you anyway.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so, really quick here, what's Zen Bounty Wars #1 all about?
Steve, my
It's
friend.
it's Zen's exploration about what it means to be a bounty hunter. He, at the beginning of the story, encounters a guy who's known as a bounty killer. This is a true thing in the bounty hunting genre, and that's a guy who kills his quarry even if the contract was dead or alive. In other words, what they do is when they haul the carcass in, they always say to the magistrate, I had to kill him. He tried to escape and was going to kill me. It was self defense. So they're just cold blooded killers. This sets Zen off, and he really begins questioning being a bounty hunter. Okay. And what happens is he communes in the celestial garden of meditation with Master Sattva, the master of Om, who basically brought him up and still provides guidance to him anywhere in the cosmos. And Sattva simply says, before you make any rash decisions, go meet some other bounty hunters because you're such a loner before you make a decision. Zen does just that. He goes to a bounty hunting lodge. He meets several, and we meet several very interesting, diverse bounty hunters. Into the mix comes Nera X, who's like a part-time bounty hunter, and they get involved in this huge bounty war that's being conducted between two warring space lords who want to take over that sector of space. So it's Zen and Nera's biggest bounty hunting adventure ever. It's a serious story, but it's got a lot of fun, very cool characters, and it's the first of 4 issues.
Fantastic.
Word.
Very
Thank
nice.
you.
I got to say, the last time you guys were on here, Bill, it hit me finally now what she did here with the art and what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the Hildebrandt brothers when they were doing the Marvel Masterpieces set.
Yeah, right.
I got you. Okay.
Just their work in general, how they use a lot of like these oranges and blues and everything to kind of create the push and pull. Yeah, it's great looking stuff.
Oh yeah,
she knows so much more about art than I do. She's already like the 2.0. She knows so much more about color theory. She's an oil painter. She's good God, man. It's like I'm just flying by the seat of my pants even today.
That's
it's
great.
like, I drew this. It looks cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I don't know if I mentioned last time, but I'm writing. I'm over there in Ocean Park in the beautiful setting. I'm writing a story called Manga Zen, and it's a manga like Zen adventure that I'm hoping that Kat will work on with me.
Oh,
if
fantastic.
I can get her to do it, yeah.
Very nice. Well, Bill, you always got bragging rights to say that, well, I created you.
He did. That's a fact.
It's gotten to the point now where
So vicariously, anything you create, it's kind of like I did it.
It's kind of like I did it. You're gonna have to thank me when you get your Oscar.
This is great stuff, man. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Seriously, this was a wonderful conversation. I'm glad we got to spend some time again. And
Your
everybody,
show is great, Peter. We just love being here. Anytime you want us back, we'll be here.
Oh, fantastic. I think we can get a third one in us at some point.
I bet you we could, yeah.
But thank you guys so much. And everybody in the chat, thank you guys as well. Really appreciate you guys. Your questions, your comments are always appreciated. Thank you so much. And seriously, go check it out. It's on Kickstarter right now. 70 hours are left. So Zen Bounty Wars #1. The link is in the description of the show as well. And thank you, Metatron. Appreciate that. And Kelraiser, thank you as well. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show. I've enjoyed these 2 conversations with you guys. This has been great. And hopefully we touched upon a couple things that resonate with those out there, and maybe some of the advice given if anyone was struggling with some of this. Which I said oftentimes, especially the questions I pose to you guys, I'm finding that those questions come to me a lot. So thank you guys for sharing your wisdom and experience tonight too. Appreciate it.
Thank you for running such a great and thoughtful show, Peter.
Yeah,
we
man.
really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I got the best seat in the house. That's how I feel.
Thanks
So
again.
thank you guys.
Awesome, dude.
Bill, Steve, thank you so much. Before you guys go, Bill, where can they find you? And then Steve, where can they find you?
They can find me at billmouse.com. All of my links for my social media and everything is all right there on my webpage, and that makes me easy to find. I'm usually more active on my Facebook page than anywhere else, so that's where I'll be.
Right, and I'm active on Instagram at Stern8506 for some strange reason. Stern8506, Twitter Stephen L. Stern, and if you go to the Zen Intergalactic Ninja Facebook group, I'm there all the time.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Everyone out there, thank you guys as well. Everybody have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow with an open lines show, so anyone can pop in and feel free to join. Let's have a conversation. Whatever you guys want to talk about, let's talk about it. I'll be back at 9:30 Eastern tomorrow night on here for that. Until then, everyone, have a great night and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you guys soon. All the best.
Good night.
Bye-bye.